Welcome to another episode of the Hat Collecting Talk Show, where we talk about the many different metaphorical hats that people wear in our lives because no one does just one thing and everyone has a story. I am your host, Lacey Artemis, a creative Jill of all trades, and each episode I interview a different person, but I ask them the same set of questions so we get some interesting, different takes on the same ideas. My guest today is Nadi Z, who is a jack of all spades, freelancer, event coordinator, adventurer, and polyglot wannabe. They've been a software developer, academic researcher, music DJ, and more, right after my own heart. Nadi does not have a pronoun preference, so any pronouns are fine. Welcome to the show, Nadi.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's. I'll just go ahead and be honest. This is another one of my friends, so this is probably going to be a more relaxed, fun interview. But they're always fun to do. So yeah, the question I now start with on the show is, can you tell us where you grew up and a little bit about that place?
Sure. I was basically born in Sofia, Bulgaria. I wouldn't say I grew up there. I moved to the Toronto area when I was really young, and I grew up mostly in Mississauga and then Markham, which is actually where I'm filming this from currently. I like to talk about Bulgaria just because most people don't know much about it at all. Like, some people don't even know like what continent it's on sometimes. So people there are very direct. Like, when you're in a grocery store or something, like, you know, there's no necessity to be like really nice to the customer. Like, if a worker's having a bad day, they'll kind of like, you know, complain to the customer, and then the customer will like complain back, and it's kind of like, you know, fun back and forth. Yeah, it's a bit more like real, a bit more direct, I would say. But, you know, at the same time, if a worker wants to take their anger out on someone, it's like, also, I guess that's the downside to that. I mean, overall, there are like a lot of amazing things about Bulgaria as well. The best yogurt in the world comes from there because there's a very specific bacteria that's only found there that is actually found in Balkan yogurt. Yeah, it's very unique taste. It has amazing food overall. Yeah, like I said, the people are great too because they're very open and very real and honest. They're also like open about having a good time as well.
Yeah, and just, while we're on this subject, rather than kind of circling back to it later, because I know that you're currently in Canada, but you have been living in the Czech Republic. Based on your experience there thus far, what would you say maybe are is some like a true stereotype or a false stereotype about that place?
This one's a bit easier to answer actually, because they also have a similar bad reputation with the customer service side of things, but I guess the stereotype there is that they're kind of cold and they aren't very helpful. But the true part, I would say, is just that they don't feel obligated to be exceptionally nice. They're just doing their jobs. They don't fake any pleasantries and stuff like that. I don't think actually Czech people are necessarily cold people. I think they just take a little time to warm up to you.
I've heard similar things about apparently the Scandinavian countries are pretty similar. They're very friendly people, but they seem a little bit more flat from the beginning because we're used to in North America, people tend to be more like boisterous, I guess. But yeah, so I'm going to do our land acknowledgement now. We're both you spent a lot of time in some of your formative years in Ontario. And I've lived here my whole life. So Toronto, or Tekaronto, is located on the traditional unceded territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations, the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Anishinaabe. It is a dish with one spoon treaty territory, and we are uninvited visitors on this land.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that, and I completely echo those sentiments.
Yeah, it's something that wasn't in the show at the very beginning, but as the show kind of evolved and I figured out what I wanted to be here and not be here, like adding the Black Lives Matter button to the interface permanently, because that's another thing that this show officially stands behind. So that's another thing I wanted to add because it is something that I think is very important, and I want to help raise awareness of it. And if anyone's not as familiar with land acknowledgements and kind of where they come from, if you go back and watch or listen to episode 6 with Jade Pichette, they did a very good job explaining the origin of it and why we do it, which was very informative. So with that said, we're going to roll into the regular series of questioning. I mentioned in the introduction a few of the things that, well, several things that you do or have done. Do you want to, like, I guess we can pick like a couple of them and kind of tell, I guess, the audience rather, how you got into them?
Mm-hmm.
I guess like I was curious to actually ask a little bit about the like the DJing stuff as one example, because that's one of the things that is kind of on my like master list of like, oh, I'd really like to talk to someone who does this and learn a bit more about it. And I guess that also ties into the like event coordination, because I know a little bit of that you've done as well. And then I guess I'll let you pick the other thing that you want to talk about.
Sounds good. I was very excited to talk about the event aspect. So I'll kind of put in the DJing in with that. So basically, it's kind of interesting because I was never, growing up, like I was never a person that necessarily liked big parties and stuff like that, or I'm more on the introverted side. So it's funny that I ended up being so passionate about event planning and stuff like that. But I guess the idea behind it is that whenever I see sort of like a gap in the world, like, you know, some sort of event that I would want to attend, but there's just not enough of those kind of events, maybe none. I definitely jump in there and I just make it happen, you know. And I think, you know, or if there's some sort of interest of mine that I want to share with others, like whether that's music or, you know, a particular topic or a particular atmosphere or something like that, I definitely make it happen and I try to share it with others. So yeah, that's the idea. It's whenever I see something that I want people to experience more of, and I want to share with the world, then I just make it happen. So it's very similar with DJing. Like I have a deep love for music, and there's just certain genres that people may have not heard of at all, or a certain atmosphere that I want to create with the decorations and the lighting and the sound all together. And it's like maybe somebody has never experienced that in their life, and I just want them to hear those sounds, that music, and those vibes, and maybe they'll like it too. And you know, if not, that's cool as well. I don't know. I just like to share my passions about certain things. You know, if the event is not a DJ event, which most of mine are not, if it's maybe a discussion circle or something like that, you know, I want people to discuss these kind of topics that maybe they don't have any space to discuss in their lives. So
yeah, I can definitely relate to that. This show pretty much exists for a very similar reason. Like they say, you know, you know, create the art or create the thing that you wish there was more of in the world that you want to be able to enjoy. And I make this show, and it's like, this is exactly, if I didn't make this show and I found out it existed, I'd be like, oh my God, that is the greatest thing ever. I'm so glad someone thought of that. So I'm like, I get to be the one that thought of that, kind of.
yeah.
But yeah, there was, so is there one of your other things that you wanted to just talk briefly about how you got into it?
So basically I ended up earlier this year in January, before the pandemic, well, before the big lockdown, I got into something quite unusual, which is teaching English in schools, but through theater. That kind of brings me around full circle almost to my high school experience, where I was like a bit involved in the theater, the theater group there. And, you know, I've always like wanted to be more into acting and into maybe like production and stuff like that. But I never, you know, with all my other interests, I never got like super involved in that. So, you know, instead, throughout my whole undergrad and part of my post-grad, I worked at a theater as an usher, as a box office person, and as like a concession stand person. Like I was always like involved somehow with the theater, but usually not on the stage itself. Coming back around full circle, now I got to, before the pandemic, I got to do a bit of acting myself.
Yeah, it's really kind of funny the way that sometimes these things happen for us. And again, that is another reason why I'm glad that I made this show, because it's not just like, as much as I would like, because I used to do a podcast where I actually interviewed people specifically like, hey, let's talk for an hour about the thing that you do and like your expertise in it. And now it's like, that's just kind of a piece of it. And then the rest of it is all the other factors that kind of play in. But these interesting little how certain things happen for us. And like those stories are really cool. And so I love that I get to share those on the show here. So The other thing the other part of this question, and kind of similar to the first question, would you say that there is a biggest misconception about like event planning / DJing? We'll focus on that one, I guess.
Curveball number one. That this is where I was going to talk about science. Here's an easy one. I have zero formal training on this, like none whatsoever. You know, my whole education was in science and math and computer science. So basically, I guess the misconception might be that, you know, you need a lot of formal training or educational background in this, but really you don't. You can start as, like, you know, on a purely volunteer basis. You can start doing things and then, you know, build your resume from there, and then you can maybe apply for part-time sort of event related things, or you can always get into it with little to no experience, I would say, and eventually, you know, you'll have that resume built up, and then you can actually score a sweet gig, maybe. I don't know. Like I said, my well, I didn't say, but with my acting thing, I also do I was doing the tour booking as well. So that was where the event coordinating came in. And yeah, I scored that purely on the basis of just saying, well, yeah, I have some experience in the, you know, with booking venues and events and stuff. And I was trusted.
Yeah, no, again, it's like I have actually organized a couple of small events myself in the past, and I was just thinking, you just kind of reminded me of that. I was thinking literally, like, I just contacted a venue and said, like, when is a room free, or is there a room free on this day? And then just kind of brought the supplies, and you just create like an event and send out invites, and it's actually very easy. The hard part is to kind of keep doing it and have it build up and become like an established thing. I think that in my experience, that was the real challenge of it. And I tried it. I was like, it was kind of fun. I was kind of glad I did it, but I realized this isn't what I want to like do ongoing. But for some people like you, that is something that you enjoy doing ongoing. So again, that's a part of this show too, is talking about like learning what really is your thing and how you figure that out. So you said you wanted to talk about something about science specifically.
I just wanted to throw in as well, with aiming to get into with undergrad and stuff. I wanted to be an academic researcher, and like I was for a while. I did a master's and stuff, but yeah, the thing I didn't realize about that is that it really is like something you have to be completely passionate about. It's because it's difficult, it's underpaid, it's completely it's over super competitive, and you have to be willing to make more sacrifices and just be like really in it for the love of the field. And well, I'm specifically talking about the research aspect, the more physical sciences aspect of it. You know, it's completely different in the health sciences, I imagine, but it's definitely something you have to be passionate about and patient with, because you probably will not be doing well financially until like later on in life, I would say. But on the flip side, you know, with software development and stuff, it's like almost the opposite. Like you still obviously have to be very passionate about it, but it's definitely like easier to just get into and just be earning a stable income from earlier on. So just wanted to give people heads up on that.
Yeah, one thing you said there just caught my attention. You were saying like academic research is something that you can't make real money off of for a while, and my brain just immediately went to like art, because that's been my experience. So it's just like, oh, it's funny how like, you know, that's another example of something like you have to be really passionate to stick to it to actually make it into a sustainable career. So interesting, at least to me.
Yeah, no, I always found the parallels between that, but you know, the misconception is that, you know, science is like, it's just like tech, you know, it's prestigious and therefore it's well paid, right? Well, not necessarily, you know, unless you're a tenured professor or whatever.
So with all of that said, do you remember when you were a kid what you wanted to do or be when you grew up?
The funny thing about that, when I was asked that question in grade 2, I still remember this. Everyone had to draw a picture of what they wanted to be. I drew myself as a cashier at a grocery store. Looking back, that makes perfect sense. You know, like I've worked many jobs, and one of my favorite types of jobs is just like working with cash, doing quick mental math and checking out numbers and balancing at the end. You know, like I love it. So it's kind of funny that I drew that so early on. That said, later on in high school, I took my first programming class, and then I was like, that's it, I'm sold. This is amazing. This is fun. I'm going to be, you know, a programmer when I grow up. I'm going to work in an office, going to have a cubicle, you know. That was my goal back then. Of course, things changed again, and I went to university, and I was taking programming, but I was also taking science courses. And then at that point, I was like, oh, wow, science is really cool. I'm going to be a researcher. So over the years, what I want to be when I grow up has kind of changed, and it keeps changing, I would say. I wanted to be in geology, then I wanted to be in chemistry, then I wanted to be in like more physics-y stuff, and then I wanted to be into neuroscience. So, you know.
Yeah, again, that's kind of the like unofficial like core of this show really is like, because my initial plan was to only interview other generalists or other people like you and I who've done so many different things, but I realized that might get kind of challenging because a lot more people do have like a main thing. But it's just really interesting to me how often people like had a clear idea when they were very young of like, I think I want to do this, and then like how often does that actually end up panning out? So I like to ask that and just kind of see where people end up. And you and I have had very similar, like, curious winding paths. And like, it's like every week there's something like, oh, that's really interesting. I want to try that. And I mean, that's great. Like, we need people like that in the world, even if we, you know, don't get as much like, you know, media time as the specialists do. But yeah, there's this cultural narrative that I love to harp on about, you know, we're supposed to have everything figured out by the age of 30, and that's, you know, that's not really the case most times. So the way I'm framing this question now is, at what age do you think that you, or do you feel that you kind of was like, okay, I think I'm on the right path, or the right path for me now. I'm on the path I want to be, and I want to keep going forward on this path. What age were you at, if that's happened yet, and if you remember?
Well, I'll say that I'm a little bit past that 30 mark, and I still haven't really gotten to that point. But that's not to say that I haven't like thought I was at that point before. I've been through a few times where I really felt like, yeah, I'm on the right path. Got to just keep doing this. And, you know, maybe a few years later, I realized, oh, maybe I should do something else. But anyway, the most intensely that I felt that was somewhere halfway through my undergrad, when I was, you know, deep into the more specialized courses, and had, you know, done a couple of work terms. I was in the co-op program, so I had, you know, work terms and then school terms between those. So, you know, I had done a couple of those, and I was taking courses I liked, and so I really felt like, yeah, I like studying, I like academics, so I'll just be a researcher. But, you know, the thing with that I didn't realize for some reason at the time is that, you know, being in school is very different than actually being a scientist. Completely different. So, you know, when I went to grad school, where it was like a little bit more like being an actual researcher, then I realized, okay, maybe this is like too intense for me. You know, I don't know. I've definitely felt that before, but then I would change my mind. So currently, I'm really happy with where I've been in the last few years, which is just not sticking to one particular thing, being more of like a freelancer, taking, you know, applying to opportunities or taking tasks that might be interesting to me, and seeing where that goes. And then, you know, you can always bail. I love that.
I feel like an unofficial, there's probably going to be a bunch of these over time, but like an unofficial slogan for this show is be like, there's no wrong answer, there's no wrong path. Because I think, again, I'm trying to combat these ideas that there's a right way to do things, there's a right path, there's a way things should go. And just like, I just want to hear how things have gone for people, so that more people know that, like, oh, they're not so different, or they're not so like alone in kind of their experience. And so I really appreciate like having someone like you who's kind of like myself, and then I have other people that are a little bit more kind of on the normal path, I guess. But what would you say is one of the biggest obstacles for you to kind of getting to this point where you feel like, okay, I'm on sort of, I know what I want, I know how I want to run things here?
Yeah, I would say this society isn't really built for people with multiple interests. You know, as you said. So one of the obstacles has just been like trying to focus on one. one thing. And I've always found that if I do that for some time, if I, do like a full 8-hour workday in a particular area for some time, I always burn out. Like, I always feel like the rest of my life is being neglected. So one thing that I came to realize is that if possible, in terms of like paid work, I prefer part-time. So if possible, I'll always ask for that or like apply to those positions. And then on my free time, I'll focus on my other interests. And I find, I'm willing to take the pay cut that comes with, and that's what works for me.
So I know that you did mention earlier in one of your answers that you are, or I guess you consider yourself more introverted. I know introversion and shyness aren't the same thing, but out of curiosity, do you consider yourself a shy person at all?
Well, I actually answered yes and no to that question because, initially, absolutely, I've always been shy, and I like to such an extent that like I actually hate meeting people one on one. Like it's just not my thing. But once that kind of initial shyness like passes, or I start to get to know people better, or I'm in like, for some reason, being in a group helps. This part is key. And if I feel like, safe and accepted and in good company and not judged and all that kind of stuff, then I kind of become the opposite. Like I become a bit oversharing. I'm very like direct. I'm very kind of no filter. This also happens actually when I get angry. So if something happens to me, like I don't get like proper service or whatever, I have no trouble like going up to the people or sending an email, being very direct. So in that sense, like I'm not shy. It's only like in the initial meeting of people, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's again, no wrong answers. And again, I want to feature different experiences of different people. So that is, I'm glad that I'm featuring that because I think that's probably a less common experience for people. But that is your experience, and that's totally valid and great. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and speaking of these, again, I'm looking at different like cultural narratives or these different accepted ideas of how things are supposed to be or how we're supposed to behave. And so another question here is, we're not supposed, as adults, as grown-ups, we're not supposed to like goof around too much unless we're like, playing with kids or something. But playfulness is an integral part of the human experience. And so I'm curious, what is the last silly or playful thing that you did on purpose?
I feel like I do silly things every day, so I figured my answer would be different on the day that I actually record. I kind of like to throw my silliness around, left and right, even online. So, right now I'm playing this online mafia game, which, I would say I'm acting a little bit silly on. But yeah, I can't really point to very specific things just because it's kind of everywhere.
Yeah, I think like with this question, I think the more interesting answers are probably going to come from the people who maybe aren't as like out of their way, normally silly already. Like people have to think, let me actually think about that. Although I do send the questions to all the guests beforehand so that they have a chance to prepare if they want to. But yeah, I've known a few people who have said that they're already silly people, and so trying to like remember the actual last thing that they did is a little bit more tricky. But it's just, again, trying to promote this idea of like, being silly doesn't have to mean like putting on like a clown costume, or it can be anything. It could be wearing mismatched socks. If that makes you feel silly and playful, then that's totally fine.
Well, I'm wearing them right now, so there you go.
Yeah. So again, just trying to emphasize there's no wrong answers, and whatever you do, that's fine. I'm just, again, it's like, what do you do? That's what I want to know. I want to hear the stories. So, and the next question here, what was the last new thing that you learned or tried, and what is something else new that you would still like to learn or try?
So the last thing I wrote there was that I had just realized potentially why my hair was graying faster this year. I had noticed this year that my hair was graying like a lot faster. Or actually, I got my first gray hairs like, less than a year ago. And I was wondering like what the hell's going on. And I couldn't figure it out. And then just recently I figured out maybe what was going on. So I started taking zinc every day roughly a year ago. and for immune system, for energy, and for my skin, because I have a lot of acne. So it was helping with that. But it turns out if you take too much zinc, you can actually deplete other metals such as copper. And copper is one of the ones that prevents your hair from going gray. So I figured maybe that was the cause. So maybe just a bit of a mineral imbalance. could be something else. Could just be pandemic stress. But yeah, so that was like something I recently randomly discovered. For new things and new skills, I really want to get more into vocals, because I like singing randomly, like for fun. But I have zero kind of training. Like I used to be in a lot of choirs in school and stuff, but I don't have any like specific like vocal training for singing and stuff. So I wanted to get more into that, maybe with YouTube. And
That is something that I have a little bit of experience with, as you might guess. The regular watchers and listeners might notice that my voice can kind of fluctuate through episodes or from one to the other. Yeah, it's hard to kind of maintain when you're not speaking in your actual natural voice. It's hard to kind of maintain it on a longer term basis. So that's something that I also need to practice more still. But yeah, thank you for that answer. So this next one might be a little bit more tricky. I'm sure you have some notes for this. I'm very curious to hear what they're going to be.
All right.
What would you say are your two most dissimilar hats? And of course, hats referring to skills or interests.
Word for word, I wrote, God, so many of them. But here's what, my actual thoughts are on that. Yeah, basically, I feel like on the surface, some very extremely polar opposite interests almost. I'll get into that. But, to me, in my mind, they all kind of blend together. I feel like I wouldn't feel complete without having these opposites. Like I'm a person very much of opposites, again, with the introversion versus being very authentic and open thing. With to me, they don't feel like they're that, opposite or different. To me, everything's connected and I need all the aspects. But, from a surface standpoint, I would say the two that are most different from like an external perspective would be the fact that I'm both very into, hard sciences, like evidence-based science, naturalistic views of the world. And at the same time, I'm very into like spirituality and, Eastern philosophy, specifically like yoga, and, I dabbled in Buddhism and stuff like that as well. I'm into kind of, enjoying the magical aspects of life as well. So.
Yeah, no, and that's a unique answer actually to this question, and I really like that. So, and yeah, I remember how you used to have a like a picture, I think, on your profile, something like "Never Lose Wonder" or something like that, and that always stuck with me after I saw it. And again, it's just one of those things that kind of comes back to the playful silliness of just like not letting life and not letting capitalism kind of beat the spark out of you, and just like keep your passion, keep your curiosity, and just keep being like a fun, authentic person. And of course, not everyone has to be like goofy and silly and playful. Whatever is your authentic energy or whatever. But again, that's why I'm getting different perspectives on these questions here on the show. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that unique answer.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what, again, I have a little bit of insight on this already, but in your own words, what is your schedule like, and what would you say, if there is, what was your peak time of day?
Basically, I would be, like the classic night owl. Although I tend to have a more of a consistent schedule than a lot of people. Like, if I sleep I kind of sleep around the same time every day, depending on the situation, like what I'm working in, the pandemic, all that other stuff. It depends what time that is, but it's usually between 1 and 3 a.m., which is where I go to bed. Sorry, that's not my peak time. That is when I go to sleep. And then my peak times, I would say there's actually multiple ones. In terms of like very like mentally involved work, or like very like mentally demanding tasks, I would say it's like more in the afternoon. And then I get like more of a burst of physical energy near the evening. So I do my like exercise and yoga in the evening actually, and then I do errands and stuff like that around that time as well. And then in the night, so like after 10 p.m., I get like the creative energy. So then, you know, like the other energies have been sort of dissipated, and now I just have this like creativity. And so, and you know, that goes on till after midnight. So yeah, that would be my peak time in terms of maybe like creative writing or just meditating, or yeah, so it's kind of three different times, but they're all, yeah, like afternoon, evening sort of thing.
Yeah, that's another interesting answer, even though like I already know you. I guess I haven't heard you put it in that context before. And so as you were explaining that, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I was trying to think to my own life and my own experience if I have a similar thing. And so thanks for giving me something to think about. The next question here in our series. The pandemic obviously has disrupted everyone's life in some way, some more than others. What is a silver lining or a positive outcome that has resulted in your life specifically because of the disruption from the pandemic?
Basically, for me, I would say I've been in a very fortunate pandemic situation. At the time of the initial lockdown, I was working in that theater teaching thing, and so basically, like all my hours vanished, and I had like all the free time in the world. And for me, so keep in mind, I was in Czech Republic, so things there were like very different than here, I would say. So initially, the lockdown was very quick and very strict, and then it lasted about 2 months, and then it completely reopened. Like, you know, there was no, I mean, there was some gradual stages, obviously, but it kind of like really fully reopened after that. So I had a pretty normal summer, but I'm a bit all over the place normally. And even if I have a lot of free time, I kind of like use it on like internet stuff or like going outside, hanging out with friends, whatever. But during the pandemic, I had more time to actually focus on some things that I would say are not that are not hobbies, but they're still like useful things. So for example, I was like doing cooking, which I don't usually do, and I was doing more reading, which I don't usually do. And I actually picked up ukulele. I was learning ukulele and stuff like that. So you know, it was a good opportunity for me to actually slow down and do things that I like pretty much never make time for normally.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate in my situation as well. So I understand. And so the next question in our series here, have you dealt with any disabilities or mental health struggles in your life, and how have you worked through them?
So basically, I have dealt with a lot of stuff, but I would say, yeah, my main things, I have several anxiety disorders and as well some executive dysfunction things. I like to name it like that because I don't like saying, you know, necessarily ADHD or like something more specific, because I find just saying, you know, neurodiverse is like more accurate for me, you know, less prone to stereotypes and stuff like that. I have also dealt with like, you know, major depression and chronic depression, but it's more of like an episodic thing. It's less of a like constant thing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Again, as much or as little as you're comfortable discussing, and I guess how have you like worked through these struggles mainly,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you're willing to talk about.
Oh no, I absolutely love talking about it because it's like I actually have in grad school I was an advocate for mental health, and I actually went to not international, a national conference on the topic, and I'm like super passionate about discussing these things. So basically, I always encourage people to try to fight the stigma, and especially like self stigma about it, to like try to get help in whatever way is accessible to them. And at least for me, this applies to like swallow their pride, you know, if that's what it's about, or trust that maybe there are help out there and treatment out there. So yeah, for me personally, I have tried a bunch of things, and they've all like helped me in my, I call it like my toolbox or my arsenal of of coping mechanisms or strategies, so to speak. You know, I can just list them off, and I'm not saying they're all equally helpful or that like you need to do all of them. But for example, so I've tried medication. I've tried like as needed medication, which is like what works for me more so than daily. And then I've tried like various types of therapy. I've done one-on-one, I've done group therapy at school. I've done, so for me, like specific like CBT and like very specific psychotherapy worked better than just talk counseling kind of thing. And then on the like completely other side of it, exercise, yoga, eating right, sleeping right, like all these things, they actually do make a difference for me and maybe for others.
It's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. No, that's great. I just wanted to have you just, I guess, talk a little bit about like the kind of the hows, which you did. So,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, there's a lot of different tools and kind of options, as you said, and different things work for different people. So, but yeah, I just want again, I'm also passionate about like raising awareness of things and kind of breaking stigmas and just kind of helping people. Like sort of my unofficial motto is learn, connect, inspire. And so I'm trying to help people learn through this show. I'm trying to connect people to other people who've been on the show and, bringing information that can maybe benefit their life in some way. As I'm sure you're well aware, failure isn't always a bad thing because sometimes we can learn very important, valuable lessons from failing at things. And so, with that in mind, what is something in your life that you have failed at that you're glad that you failed at, and what did you learn from it?
What I wrote for my failure, I would say the biggest one would be career-wise. I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to do research. And when I got to grad school, and I realized like what it's actually like, it's like the applying for grants, the countless hours of like reading papers and maybe getting nowhere, all the other stuff involved and how competitive it really was. I basically decided I would kind of give that a break. So in a sense, like I felt like I failed. I did try to drop out of school, but luckily my academic advisor wasn't going to let that happen right away. Like she was like, "Is there anything we can do?" Like, and she helped me out with like getting some accommodations and whatnot. So I appreciate that. The failure part was the fact that I didn't continue on with it, I guess. With that, I got to actually explore so much more, so many other aspects of life. When I was in school, I was kind of very, I wouldn't say I was not single-minded at all. Like I was still doing all these other things like event planning and all that. But I would say I was kind of compartmentalizing things and like, okay, this is my career and these are my interests. And like, I couldn't kind of see outside that box. So then once I kind of broke free from that, I realized like, I could just do whatever the F I want. I was just like, holy shit, I could do like literally anything I want. And some of it could make money and some of it might not make money. And it kind of opened up the door to a lot of things. So I got to explore, like other career paths like software development. So much opportunity kind of opened up to me from that academic failure.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, long winding paths. It's more common than people realize. And so that's why I'm trying to bring more awareness to that on the show here. The next question here in our series with relationships, obviously the close relationships in our life can have a very big impact if the people are supportive or not supportive, if they're helping us kind of find resources or helping us figure ourselves out, or if they're just like, it's your problem. So I'm curious, in your particular case, how have the close relationships in your life been with you in regards to your goals or your path or things like that?
I'm really grateful for my close relationships, and I find them, very supportive in that regard, depending on the people. So, my close friends and more intimate relationships, they fully support me in whatever I do. And then there's like on the flip side, my parents, they also support me, but in a different way. They always promoted what their interests were, which is, they're both engineers. They always promoted that, but at the same time, let me choose my own path. And now I'm finding if I ever run into like financial troubles or something like that, I know that I could come back here, like to their place and to stay with them and like no questions asked, so I know that I have that safety net. They'll support me in kind of whatever I choose to do, even if they, like they might secretly be hoping I'd become an engineer again, but you know, who knows? Maybe.
This next question, I'm sure you have some notes, and I'm sure they'll be helpful. So I kind of realized recently that you don't have to necessarily be older than someone to give them advice. We can give advice to anyone of any age if we have more experience in a particular thing. So in kind of in general, what advice would you give to a teenager? What advice would you give to a 30-year-old? And what advice would you give to like a grandparent?
Yeah, I do have a couple of notes here on that. For teenager, I wrote that, you know, in this day and age now, back in our parents' generation, or you know, back in several generations back, it was very much like you picked a thing, you know, you might even have the same job your whole life. But now it's not like that at all. So what I would tell teenagers now is to sort of keep an open mind, maybe you know, study something that you're really interested in, but keep an open mind to the fact that that might not be what you end up working in, and that's okay. And it's, you know, it's never too late, and you can always switch things later on. But just keep an open mind that the world right now is kind of different than it used to be in the last century, and just be open to new experiences and like rapidly changing areas of work and study. And then for the people my age, yeah, especially like hammering this point of like, it's never too late, early 30s, even late 30s, heck, any time is not too late to completely start over, so to speak. You know, you could always go back to school, you could always take online courses, you could always even self-teach if that's your thing. So yeah, it's never too late to completely start over. So that's what I would say to people my age. And then for people much older, yeah, maybe a grandparent, I definitely want to emphasize, you know, they say one of the biggest regrets of people, like when they're dying, is like they didn't do everything they wanted to do, or they didn't spend enough time with someone, or, you know, there's always regrets. So I'm gonna like emphasize, if you're getting older, you know, you still might have time, you might have 20 years ahead of you. So if you feel like there's something that you haven't done in your life that like you really want to do, like travel the world or spend time with your grandkids, or I don't know, whatever that is, like definitely do it.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add there. Again, I try to just let the guests kind of give their answer, and I might have an anecdote to add, but usually with this one, you know, just want to let your words kind of stand on their own. The next question here is, I'm giving the guests now the chance to ask me a question and put me on the spot, and I don't usually know in advance what it's going to be, so I'm about to potentially get a surprise.
And you did sort of answer this earlier, but yeah, what was your motivation for having this podcast in particular? How do you choose the speakers, and what do you hope the listeners will get out of it?
Yeah, so I kind of got asked this on a previous episode. As the short answer to the first part is, why did I start it? And it's because I learned in the past through other projects that I did that I really enjoy interviewing people and learning from them and getting to share that with other people. As for how I pick the guests, a lot of them so far have been people that I already know, so people I've already talked to, or people who I know things that they do or have done. So I'm like, they have an interesting combination of like, how cool would it be to have someone on my show who's a dog trainer, a makeup artist, and a mushroom hunter? Like, how often do you hear that sort of a combination? And again, like if I found a podcast with stuff like that, I'd be like, oh my God, this is going to be so interesting. And so that's kind of like, I'm making it both for myself and also for other people like me. And hopefully this show will help to connect me to more people like me, and we can kind of all learn from each other. I think kind of like the main things of just kind of realizing that there definitely isn't one right way that things are supposed to go. And a lot of people do end up having very winding paths, and they try and fail at a lot of different things before they find what feels like a good fit or the right fit. And you know, there's people out there who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s who still haven't figured that out, and they're still kind of trying to find their way. And I just really want to also combat those cultural narratives that are not true, that I think discourage a lot of people, because I think that's how I felt. And when I started this, it was like, okay, I'm over 30 and I haven't figured it all out yet, and I want other people to know that that's okay. So it's just kind of learning and kind of connect and just yeah, it's just curiosity driven, really. So as it goes on, I'm very interested to see who's going to find it and what they're going to have to say, and what the guests have even said about coming on the show and having fun, and just yeah, just thinking it's an interesting mix of kind of questions and discussion topics. So that is my not quite as short answer as I wanted it to be, but that is my answer.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to say I think it's a great idea, and I really appreciate it. I do plan to watch more of the videos. I definitely think it's a fantastic idea, and yeah, thanks for, I guess, filling that gap, so to speak.
Yeah, I know it's a bit of a commitment. I realize to sit down and like watch something for an hour or so, and that's part of why I also make it available as an audio only podcast, because I know some people it'll be a lot, because most of the information, like there's not usually stuff that you have to see. It's kind of just like a couple of points, and yeah, for some people I know that just listening will be easier and they can still get, you know, the same, most of the same value out of it. So yeah, at this point, I'm going to ask, are there any specific causes or charities that you'd like to promote or raise awareness of?
Basically, what I wanted to say here is that instead of charities, I actually like to approach things in two different ways, alternate ways to donating to charities. Like, absolutely, if that's your thing, like definitely keep doing that. But for me, I like to either, when someone in need is posting, whether it's like someone I personally know or like someone they know, if someone is in like a crisis situation or in a sort of like more urgent situation, and they need some financial help moving out of an abusive home, or like getting a surgery, or whatever it is, like I definitely jump in to those kind of situations and support that. And then the other thing, anyone can do at any time, is buy your friends art, buy your friends products, or whatever their craft is or trade. Support them in that way, whatever that may be, like whatever you're into. Maybe it's like music, maybe it's paintings, whatever your friends are offering, support them. So that's like, I think, a way to give back to the community that's like very more direct, and like you see the direct result of that like more clearly than like giving to a charity and like you don't know where your money's going and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's actually part of why the question is a cause or charity or a cause, because I recognize, like, for some people, like causes can, like you said, supporting your friends, supporting art, that's definitely a cause. And I don't want to like force people to pick a charity if they'd rather, just promote something. So yeah, thank you for that. So to close out the show here, we do a plug section. And so I asked the guest if the audience wants to kind of keep up with what you're doing, learn more about you or things like that. Are there any social media accounts that you are willing to share for them to do that?
So there's my two websites. So I have sort of like an artist/DJ website, which is scarletspades.com. Scarlet like the color with one T. So scarletspades.com. And then my more professional-ish website, scarletspades.wixsite.com. I have a place where all my DJ sets are available for listening and streaming, which is mixcloud.com/scarlet-spades. And then you can always find me on Facebook, facebook.com/scarlet.spades. I think those are all the correct permutations. I'm not really on any other social media. Good old Facebook user.
Yeah. No, that's and as if you're new to the show, you'll see an overlay on the screen that will show all of those, and they're also in the episode description as well as the podcast. So I try to make sure everyone, if you're not watching, you can, or if you're listening and you're not sure you heard something right, you can still get the correct links. So yeah, for mine, I've got a bunch of things, and it's hard for me to kind of cover them all, but I'll just say artemiscreates.com. Everything I do, you can find there. Everything I want you to know that I do, you can find there. And patreon.com/artemiscreates, because that's where I post like more sort of special behind the scenes stuff about what I'm doing, and I post the bonus episodes of this show, which we're about to do in a second. And what else? Yeah, I have curiosity guides. I'm writing a book. I have music. The theme music for this show is on Spotify and iTunes and Bandcamp and everything. And yeah, so that's, I guess, kind of the main stuff. Again, go to my website. Everything is there. And oh yeah, merch. I have merch. I was trying to promote that more now because I actually just released a couple of new designs. So that's also on my website, or redbubble.com/people/Artemis Creates. And yeah, so with that said, we're gonna do the hat sign off, which has become like, I love learning, but I also love getting to put on silly hats with my guests. So it's kind of my, like, I guess, second favorite part of the show. So we both have a hat prepared. We don't know what hat the other person has. So it's gonna be a surprise for both of us. I'm gonna have to take off my headphones to put mine on. So do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I'll go. Sure, I'll go. I'll try to put it on without taking off my headphones, which I haven't tried yet. So here we go.
All right. Oh boy. Okay.
This is yeah. It's my headphones are a little shifted around, but this is my ushanka, which is you know, the standard Russian hat. Keeps me warm in the winter. I legit wear this in Canadian winters, not so much in Czech winters, but yeah.
So it's actually funny because as I said, I didn't know what you were going to put on, and I actually had picked out two hats, and I was like, I try to color match on this show. Some viewers might have figured that out already, but because Nadi is wearing black, I'm wearing black, but I wanted to try to color match my hat to Nadi's hair, which is blue. So I had picked out something blue, but I actually do also have something else, and I'm like, I have to pick between them now. Okay, hold on a second. So because I normally can't actually match the hat type, I'm gonna do that. So hold on. I can't hear you at the moment, but just a second. Oh wait, can I hear through this?
I don't know. Can you?
Yes, I can. Oh wow.
Awesome.
That's
wow. So
awkward.
we have matching hats. We did not plan any of this, actually.
No, because I have another hat that I was like excited to put on because I knew that would probably like make you laugh. But I'm like, you know what? We're matching, so I'm just gonna here. I'll just like put the headphones back so you can see it better, and I will be like.
Screenshot.
That's what I was doing. I was like, oh, we could both get a. Because okay, so still just kind of laughing that actually happened. I think that's the first time I've actually had the same type of hat as the guest. I could be wrong.
Wow.
Maybe the second.
Nice.
With that said, though, this has been another episode of Hat Collecting with my lovely guest Nadi Z. And with that, thank you for watching. Check us out or head over to Patreon if you want to see the bonus episodes. Again, you can subscribe on iTunes and Patreon, or not Patreon, Spotify, other favorite podcasting platforms. And yeah, if you want to go to iTunes and leave a review, that would be awesome. Of course, not necessary, but appreciated. And thanks for listening. And yes, we're gonna wave, and hopefully you're keeping warm like we obviously are. Until next time, stay curious.
Bye.